The meeting room on Unity Prime was the largest in the galaxy. The space station hung in the darkness between stars, its metal walls stretching for miles in every direction. Inside the main hall, 12 different alien races sat around a massive, circular table. The air was thick with tension and fear. Vextar, the leader of the reptilian Sorok people, stood up slowly. His green scales caught the light as he looked around the room. His yellow eyes were filled with worry. He had called this emergency meeting for one reason. The Devourer fleet was coming. "My friends," Vextar said, his voice deep and rough, "we face our darkest hour. The machines had destroyed 17 star systems. Billions of lives are gone. They will be here in 10 days. The room fell silent. Everyone knew about the Devourer fleet. The ancient machines appeared from nowhere 50 years ago. They moved from system to system, eating everything in their path. Planets, stars, entire civilizations disappeared into their dark ships. No one knew where they came from or what they wanted. They just consumed everything. Commander Zalvi of the insect-like Klaxon race clicked her mandibles together nervously. Her forearms moved as she spoke. "Our scientists have run the calculations. If we do not stop them here, they will reach the core worlds. 20 trillion beings will die." The tall, crystal-like Zephyrians sparkled as their leader, Bright Song of Morning, spoke in musical tones. "We have gathered the largest fleet in galactic history. Every race has sent their best ships and warriors." One by one, each alien leader stood to announce their contribution to the defense fleet. The numbers were staggering. The Klaxons brought 40,000 ships, their hulls black and covered in spines. The aquatic Nerethi offered 35,000 vessels that looked like giant sea creatures made of metal. The peaceful plant-like Florans had grown 25,000 living bioships from their home worlds. The bird-like Aclare promised 15,000 fast attack craft. The rock-bodied Granitekin brought 12,000 massive fortress ships. Even the smallest races offered thousands of vessels. The total fleet would number almost 500,000 ships. Then it was humanity's turn. Kate Sullivan appeared as a blue hologram above the table. She was a middle-aged woman with short brown hair and calm eyes. As Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council, she had always been quiet during meetings. Humans were the newest members of galactic society, having only made contact 30 years ago. "Ambassador Sullivan," Vextar said, "how many ships will humanity contribute to our defense?" Kate looked around the room at all the alien faces watching her. Some seemed curious. Others looked impatient. A few appeared doubtful that the young human race could offer much help. "The United Earth government has decided to send one ship," Kate said simply. The room erupted in chaos. Alien voices rose in anger and disbelief. Commander Zalvia's mandibles clicked rapidly as she shouted over the noise. "One ship? We are facing the end of all life in the galaxy, and humans send one ship?" The Nerethi delegate, whose name was Wave Beneath Coral, slammed his wet tentacle on the table. Water sprayed everywhere. "This is an insult. While we sacrifice our entire fleets, humans hide behind our courage." A Granitekin representative, a being made of living stone, spoke in a voice like grinding rocks. "Perhaps humans are too afraid to fight alongside us. They would rather watch us die from safety." Other voices joined in. The aliens accused humanity of cowardice, selfishness, and betrayal. They said humans were showing their true nature. Some suggested kicking humanity out of the Galactic Council entirely. Through it all, Kate Sullivan remained calm. She stood perfectly still as the storm of anger swirled around her hologram. When the shouting finally died down, she spoke again. "The ship we are sending is called the UESIS Defiance. Captain Ryan Mitchell will command it. The ship will arrive at the defensive coordinates in 72 hours. That is all? Vexstar asked, his voice filled with disgust. No explanation? No apology for abandoning your galactic neighbors? Kate's expression did not change. That is all. The hologram flickered and disappeared, leaving the alien leaders staring at empty air. The silence that followed was heavy with anger and disappointment. Commander Zalve was the first to speak. I knew we could not trust them. Humans talk about friendship and cooperation, but when the real test comes, they show their true colors. They are cowards, Wave Beneath Coral agreed. They will let us die while they stay safe in their little corner of space. Bright Song of Morning's crystal body dimmed with sadness. Perhaps we expected too much from such a young species. They have not learned the meaning of sacrifice. Vexstar sat back down heavily. His tail lashed back and forth behind his chair, a sign of deep anger among his people. One ship, he muttered, against an enemy that has destroyed star systems. Either humans are fools, or they think we are. The meeting continued for several more hours. The alien leaders made their final plans without considering humanity's single ship. They would position their massive fleet in the Kepler 442 system, the last line of defense before the Devourers reached populated worlds. 500,000. Warships would create a wall of metal and energy across space. It would be the greatest battle in galactic history. Heroes would be born, and legends would be made. The fate of trillions of beings would be decided in the coming fight. And somewhere in that vast fleet, one small human ship would either prove itself or be forgotten in the fire dot. As the meeting broke up, the alien leaders went back to their ships with heavy hearts. They had hoped humanity would stand with them as equals. Instead, humans had shown themselves to be selfish and weak. The other races would remember this betrayal, assuming they survived the coming battle. None of them stopped to wonder why a species that had fought its way to the stars might send only one ship to the most important battle in galactic history. None of them asked what kind of ship could make its builders so confident. They simply assumed they knew everything about humanity based on 30 years of contact. That assumption would cost them dearly in 72 hours. They would learn that sometimes the most dangerous thing in the galaxy is not the biggest fleet or the strongest weapon. Sometimes it is the enemy you think you understand, but really do not understand at all. The countdown to the battle had begun. 3 days later, the Kepler 442 system was filled with warships. The massive galactic fleet stretched across space like a metal ocean. Nearly 500,000 vessels from 11 different alien races waited in perfect formation. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. The klaxon ships looked like giant black insects with sharp spines pointing in all directions. They moved in tight swarms, thousands of vessels flying together like angry wasps. The Nerethi fleet resembled schools of metal fish, their blue and green hulls flowing in smooth curves. Weapon ports opened and closed along their sides like gills. Breathing in the vacuum of space, the Zephyrian ships were works of art. Made from living crystal, they sparkled with inner light. Energy moved through them like blood through veins, creating patterns of color that shifted and changed. The Floran bioships were actually alive, grown from the great tree worlds of their home system. They pulsed gently, their organic hulls. Breathing as they waited for battle. Mixed among these alien vessels were ships from the smaller races. The rock-like fortress ships of the granite kin looked like flying mountains. The fast Oclery fighters darted between the larger vessels like silver birds. Every ship bristled with weapons. Every crew was ready to die for their people. Then the human ship arrived. Reality twisted and folded as the U-East Defiance dropped out of hyperspace. The alien fleet commanders watched their screens as the human vessel appeared on their sensors. What they saw made many of them angry all over again. The Defiance was small. At 2 kilometers long, it was shorter than most alien flagship vessels. Where the other ships were graceful or artistic, the human ship looked plain and practical. Its hull was gray metal covered in armor plates. Weapon pods stuck out from its sides like growths. It had no beauty, no elegance. It looked like a tool. Built for a job. Captain Ryan Mitchell sat in his command chair and looked at the massive alien fleet around him. He was 50 years old with gray hair and tired eyes. He had fought in the Outer Colony Wars 20 years ago. He knew what real combat looked like. "Impressive sight, Captain," said Commander Lisa Park from her station beside him. She was younger than Mitchell, with black hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her dark eyes studied the alien formations with professional interest. "Yes, Mitchell," replied quietly. "And every one of those ships is about to show our enemy exactly what they can do." Lieutenant Jake Morrison sat at the tactical station. He was a big man with steady hands and a calm voice. "Sir, we're getting communications from the alien fleet commanders. They want to know our position in the battle formation." Dr. Amy Foster looked up from her science station. She was thin and pale, with bright blue eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Captain, my sensors are picking up some interesting energy signatures from those alien ships." "Should I begin full scans?" Mitchell shook his head. "Not yet, Doctor. We observe only for now." On the main screen, Admiral Kethfor of the Sarok Navy appeared. His reptilian face showed clear displeasure as he looked at the human bridge crew. Behind him, other alien officers moved around his command center. "Captain Mitchell," the Admiral said, his voice cold and formal, "I am assigning your vessel to the rear guard, Grid 77 Alpha. You will provide support to our main battle." "Lines," Mitchell nodded calmly. "Understood, Admiral." "I hope your single ship proves more useful than your government's promises," Kethfor continued. "The fate of the galaxy rests on this battle." "Yes, sir, it does," Mitchell replied. The transmission ended. Around the bridge, Mitchell's crew exchanged glances. They had all heard the anger in the alien commander's voice. "Grid 77 Alpha," Morrison said, checking his navigation display. "That puts us behind almost the entire fleet. We'll barely be able to see the main battle from there." "Perfect," Mitchell said. Park looked at her captain with confusion. "Sir?" Mitchell stood up and walked to the main viewing screen. In the distance, he could see the dark edge of space where sensors showed the Devourer fleet approaching. "Commander, how long have humans been part of the Galactic Council?" 30 years, sir." "And in those 30 years, how many major battles have we observed?" Park thought for a moment. "Dozens, sir. The Council has shared tactical data from every major conflict in the past century." "Exactly," Mitchell said. "We've studied how every alien race fights. We know their weapons, their tactics, their strengths and weaknesses. But do you know what we've never seen?" "Sir, we've never seen how our enemies adapt to those tactics." Dr. Foster looked up from her instruments. "Captain, long-range sensors are detecting the Devourer fleet at the system edge. Estimated time to contact is 47 minutes. Mitchell returned to his chair. "All stations, prepare for observation and recording. Full sensor sweeps of all friendly and enemy vessels. I want every weapon fired, every maneuver attempted, and every tactical decision documented." "What about our own weapons, sir?" Morrison asked. "Shouldn't we prepare to engage?" Mitchell shook his head. "Not yet, Lieutenant. This battle will teach us everything we need to know about our enemy. The alien fleets will show the Devourers every trick they have. Only then will we know how to win." The bridge fell quiet as Mitchell's words sank in. They were not going to fight alongside their allies. They were going to watch and learn while those allies died. Park spoke carefully. "Sir, The alien commanders already think we're cowards. If we don't engage during the battle, they'll be sure of it, Mitchell finished. Good. Let them think that. Underestimation is a weapon, Commander. Sometimes the most powerful weapon of all. On the tactical display, red dots began to appear at the edge of the system. The Devourer fleet was massive, hundreds of dark ships, each the size of a small moon. They moved in perfect formation, like a plague of metal locusts crossing the void. The alien fleet commanders began issuing orders. Weapon systems powered up across 500,000 ships. Shield generators hummed to life. Fighter squadrons launched. From carrier vessels, the greatest military force in galactic history prepared to meet its destiny. In the rear of the formation, the U's Defiance drifted quietly through space. Its crew watched their instruments as the enemy approached. They said nothing as alien voices filled the communication channels with battle cries and prayers. They simply observed and recorded everything. Contact in 30 minutes, Dr. Foster announced. Mitchell leaned back in his chair. This is going to be ugly, he said quietly, but necessary. Every alien warrior who dies today will teach us something about how to kill our enemy. We'll make their sacrifice count. The countdown continued as two fleets rushed toward each other, across the darkness of space. In a few minutes, the battle for galactic survival would begin. And somewhere in the back of the formation, a single human ship waited to learn the most important lesson of all. How do you kill something that has never been killed before? The answer would come soon enough. The first shots of the battle lit up space like a new sun being born. 40,000 Klaxon ships opened fire at once, their black holes glowing with energy as they unleashed everything they had. Streams of plasma and particle beams crossed the ship. Darkness, painting the void in brilliant colors. The Devourer ships absorbed it all. Captain Mitchell watched from his position in the rear, guard as the enemy vessels swallowed the Klaxon attack like hungry mouths eating light itself. The dark holes of the ancient machines seemed to drink in the energy, growing even blacker as they fed on the alien weapons. Incredible, Dr. Foster whispered from her science station. Her instruments were recording everything as the battle unfolded. The Devourer ships are converting the incoming energy directly into their own power systems. They're actually getting stronger from being attacked. The Klaxon swarm had used the same tactics for 1,000 years. Overwhelming firepower from multiple directions, hitting the enemy with more energy than any defense could handle. Against every foe they had ever faced, it worked perfectly. Today, it made their enemies stronger. The Devourers fired back. Dark beams of energy lanced out from the ancient ships. Where they touched Klaxon vessels, the alien ships simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, not exploded. They were there 1 second and gone the next, as if they had never been built at all. My God, Commander Park breathed. Those weapons aren't just destroying matter. They're unmaking it. In the first 5 minutes of battle, 8,000 Klaxon ships vanished. The survivors broke formation, their perfect swarm tactics collapsing into panic. The insectoid aliens had never faced an enemy that could turn their greatest strength against them. The Narathi fleet moved next. 35,000 biomechanical ships flowed through space like a school of metal fish, their formation shifting and changing as they attacked. Their leaders had studied the Klaxon failure and adapted quickly. Instead of raw energy, they fired solid projectiles mixed with exotic matter bombs. The Devourer ships adapted faster. Gravitational fields appeared around the ancient vessels, bending space itself. The Narathi projectiles curved away from their rear. Targets pulled into spiraling paths that sent them harmlessly into empty space. The exotic matter bombs were caught in null space pockets that made them explode far from their intended targets. Then, the Devourers began to hunt. Smaller ships emerged. from the ancient vessels like parasites leaving a host. They moved through the Narathy formation like sharks through a school of fish, their weapons ignoring shields and armor as if they were not there. The biomechanical hulls of the Narathy ships simply dissolved when touched by devourer fire. "There. Learning," Dr. Foster said, her voice full of scientific fascination and human horror. "Each attack pattern teaches them something new. Look at the sensor readings. Every time the aliens try a new tactic, the devourers counter it within minutes. The Zephyrian crystal ships fired next, their weapons focusing pure coherent energy into lance-like beams that could cut through planets. The light show was beautiful and terrible, rainbow colors streaming across space as the crystalline vessels unleashed their most powerful weapons. The beams struck the devourer ships and disappeared, absorbed into the dark hulls without leaving a mark. "Impossible," Lieutenant Morrison muttered from the tactical station. "Those crystal lances have never failed to penetrate any known defense." But the devourers had already learned from the Klaxon energy weapons. They knew how to drink light itself, storing it and using it to power their own systems. The Zephyrian attack made their enemies stronger, just like all the others. The crystal ships tried to retreat, but devourer fighters swarmed around them like angry wasps. The beautiful alien vessels shattered under the assault, their crystal, hulls breaking apart in cascades of sparkling light. Mitchell watched it all with the cold eyes of a professional soldier. His crew was recording everything, gathering data that would soon become the most important intelligence in human history. Every alien death was teaching them how to survive. "Status report," Mitchell ordered. "First hour of battle complete," Morrison sighed, checking his displays. "Enemy casualties, 0. Allied casualties, 22% of total fleet strength. 105,000 ships destroyed or disabled." Park looked at the tactical display in disbelief. "How is this possible?" "We're using every tactic in the Galactic Military Database. We have 500,000 ships against a few hundred enemy vessels." "Because," Mitchell said quietly, "we're fighting the same way we always fight. And our enemy is something completely new." The Floran bioships attacked next, their living hulls pulsing with organic energy. They fired spores that should have eaten through any material, followed by viral weapons designed to corrupt enemy computer systems. The plant-like aliens had fought countless wars against mechanical foes. Their bioweapons had never failed. Devourers simply ignored them. The organic spores bounced harmlessly off the dark hulls. The viral attacks found no computer systems to infect. The devourer ships were not mechanical in any way the aliens understood. They were something else entirely, something that organic weapons could not touch. The bioships died like flowers in a furnace, their living hulls withering under weapons that unmade the very concept of life. Communication channels filled with panic as alien commanders realized their situation. Admiral Kethfor's voice cut through the chaos, trying to restore order to the dissolving battle lines. "All ships fall back to secondary positions, regroup and prepare for concentrated assault." But there were no secondary positions. The devourers were everywhere, their ships moving through space in patterns that defied physics. They seemed to know where every alien vessel would be before the aliens knew it themselves. "They're predicting our movements," Dr. Foster observed. "The enemy ships are positioned to intercept retreat routes that our people haven't even chosen." Yet, Mitchell leaned forward in his chair. "What else do you see, Doctor?" Foster studied her instruments carefully. "The devourer ships are not just adapting to individual attacks. They're learning our entire strategic doctrine. Every formation we use, every tactical principle we follow. They're mapping the way galactic civilization thinks about warfare. And then they counter it perfectly." The battle entered its second hour. The alien fleet was scattered and bleeding, its neat formations broken into desperate clusters of survivors. The granite-kin fortress ships tried to form a defensive wall, their massive hulls bristling with weapons. The Devourers simply flowed. Around them like water around rocks. Striking from angles, the stone-skinned aliens could not defend. The fast artillery fighters attempted hit-and-run attacks, using their speed to strike and escape. But speed meant nothing when the enemy could predict exactly where you would fly. The bird-like pilots found themselves trapped in gravitational fields that crushed their ships like eggs. Through it all, the U's Defiance remained in the rear guard, its crew watching and recording. Alien commanders began sending increasingly desperate messages to the human ship. "Human vessel, we need your help," came a transmission from a damaged Klaxon cruiser. "We are dying out here." Mitchell did not respond. "Captain Mitchell, I order you to engage the enemy." Admiral Kethver's voice was sharp with anger and desperation. His own flagship was burning, its weapons useless against the dark ships that surrounded it. Mitchell activated his communicator. "Negative, Admiral. We are observing and recording." "Observing?" The alien commander's voice rose to a roar. "My people are being slaughtered, and you sit there observing?" "Yes," Mitchell said simply, and cut the transmission. Commander Park looked at her captain with something like horror in her eyes. "Sir, they think we're cowards. They think we're letting them die while we hide in safety." Mitchell nodded. "I know. Doesn't that bother you?" Mitchell was quiet for a long moment, watching another wave of alien ships disappear under Devourer fire. When he spoke, his voice was soft but steady. "Commander, in 30 minutes, 90% of the galactic fleet will be destroyed. Those brave aliens out there will die thinking we abandoned them. They'll die hating humanity for our cowardice." He paused, his eyes never leaving the tactical display. "But their sacrifice will teach us how to kill our enemy. Their deaths will save every living thing in the galaxy. History will remember them as heroes who made the ultimate victory possible. I can live with them hating us if it means their children will live to forgive us." The third hour of battle began with the systematic destruction of the remaining alien forces. The Devourers had learned everything they needed to know about galactic military doctrine. Now they were simply cleaning up. The survivors dot in the rear guard. A single human ship continued to watch and wait. By the fourth hour of battle, the space around Kepler 442 looked like a graveyard of dreams. Broken alien ships drifted in the darkness, their hulls torn apart by weapons that unmade matter itself. Of the nearly 500,000 vessels that had started the battle, less than 200,000 remained. Most of those were damaged and running low on power. The Devourer fleet moved through the wreckage like predators, finishing wounded prey. Their dark ships had grown larger during the battle, fed by the energy of countless alien weapons. They no longer looked like individual vessels, but rather like pieces of a single vast organism spreading across space. Admiral Kethvor's flagship was dying. The great Sorok battleship that had led 1,000 victories was now a burning wreck. Its weapon systems destroyed, and its crew trapped behind failing life support. The Admiral himself sat in his command chair, scales blackened by smoke, watching his fleet die around him. "All remaining ships," he broadcast on the emergency channel. "This is Admiral Kethver. I am ordering a final assault on the enemy command ship. We will not win this battle, but perhaps we can damage them enough to slow their advance to the core worlds." The response was immediate. Every surviving alien vessel turned toward the largest Devourer ship, a dark mountain of metal that seemed to bend light around itself. It was a suicide charge, and everyone knew it. But it was better than dying uselessly while running away. The final attack began with desperate courage. Damaged ships pushed their engines beyond safety limits. Crews with no hope of survival aimed their vessels directly at enemy hulls, planning to ram if their weapons failed. It was the last act of civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. The Devourers destroyed them all without effort. Dark beams reached out and touched the charging ships. One by one, they simply stopped existing. The Admiral watched his final fleet disappear like candles being blown out by an invisible wind. In 5 minutes, it was over. Admiral Kethfor was alone in space, his burning ship surrounded by enemy vessels. He activated his personal communicator one last time, broadcasting on all frequencies. "This is Admiral Kethfor, to any ships still receiving. The galactic fleet is destroyed. We have failed. The enemy is too strong, too adaptable. They learn from everything we do and counter it perfectly." He paused, looking at his instrument readings. The Devourer ships were closing in to finish him. "Tell the core worlds to prepare for the end. And tell the humans ... double quotes. His voice became bitter. "Tell the humans that their cowardice has doomed us all." The transmission cut off as dark energy consumed the Admiral's ship in the rear guard. "Captain." Mitchell listened to the Admiral's final words without expression. Around him, his bridge crew sat in shocked silence. They had just watched the destruction of galactic civilization. "Sir," Commander Park said quietly, "the Devourer fleet is forming up for their final advance. They'll reach the core worlds in 6 days?" Mitchell nodded. "And they've learned everything they need to know about how we fight." "Sir?" Lieutenant Morrison looked up from his tactical display. "I'm reading movement in the Devourer formation. 3 ships are breaking off and heading in our direction." Dr. Foster checked her sensors. "They're coming to finish us off, Captain. We're the last ship in the system." Mitchell stood up slowly. He walked to the main viewing screen and stared out at the approaching enemy vessels. Each one was larger than his entire ship, their dark hulls radiating menace and power. 4 hours, he said quietly. "We've been watching for 4 hours." "Sir?" Park asked. Mitchell turned to face his crew. "For 4 hours, we've watched our allies die. We've seen every weapon they have, every tactic they use, every strategy they know, and more importantly, we've seen exactly how our enemy responds to all of it." He walked back to his command chair, but did not sit down. "The Devourers are perfect adaptive killers. They learn from every attack and counter it instantly. They turn enemy weapons into power sources. They predict movement patterns and trap ships before they can escape. Against any conventional military force, they're unbeatable." Morrison frowned. "Sir, if they're unbeatable, then how do we ... "Lieutenant," Mitchell interrupted, "what did you study before joining the military?" Morrison looked confused by the question. "Ancient history, sir. Earth's military conflicts." "Good. Tell me about the Battle of Thermopylae." "Sir, 300 Spartan warriors held off a Persian army of hundreds of thousands. They used the terrain to their advantage, forcing the larger force to attack through a narrow passage where numbers didn't matter." Mitchell nodded. "And what about the Battle of Agincourt?" "English longbowmen defeated French heavy cavalry. The French were better equipped and outnumbered the English, but they charged across muddy ground that slowed them down. The English used the terrain and superior tactics to win." "Exactly," Mitchell said. "Now, Dr. Foster, what makes humans different from every other species in the galaxy?" The science officer thought carefully. "We're the only species that evolved as persistence hunters, sir. We're built to chase prey over long distances until it collapses from exhaustion." "More than that," Mitchell said. "We're the only species that survived by being weaker than our enemies." The bridge crew looked at him with confusion. Mitchell continued. "Every other race in the galaxy evolved as apex predators. The Klaxons were the deadliest hunters on their world. The Sorok were the strongest predators on theirs. They all reached the top of their food chains through superior strength or speed or natural weapons. He gestured toward the viewing screen where the devourer ships were growing larger. But humans? We were weak. We were slow. We had no claws, no fangs, no armor. We survived because we learned to think our way out of every problem. We learned to use tools, to set traps, to work together in ways our stronger enemies couldn't. Match. Commander Park was beginning to understand. And the Devourers are adapted to fight apex predators. Exactly, Mitchell said. They expect energy weapons, so they absorb energy. They expect swarm tactics, so they predict movement patterns. They expect direct confrontation, so they counter with superior force. Lieutenant Morrison leaned forward. But they don't expect ... persistence hunting, Mitchell finished. They don't expect prey that refuses to fight on their terms. Dr. Foster's eyes widened as the pieces came together. Captain, you're not planning to match their firepower. You're planning to outlast them. Mitchell finally sat down in his command chair. Dr. Foster, what have your sensors learned about Devourer ship construction? They're not really machines, sir. They're more like living organisms made of some kind of programmable matter. They adapt and grow by consuming energy and raw materials. And how do living organisms die? Foster thought for a moment. Starvation. Sir, if you cut off their food supply long enough, any organism will die. Mitchell turned to Morrison. Lieutenant, prepare our weapons. But not our energy weapons. Morrison looked confused. Sir? Railguns, Lieutenant. Kinetic kill vehicles. Simple physics. No energy for them to absorb, just mass times acceleration. The Devourer ships were almost in range now. Dark energy began to build around their weapon systems. Mitchell opened a communication channel to the entire galaxy. Every surviving alien ship, every space station, every colony world would hear his words. This is Captain Ryan Mitchell of the United Earth ship Defiance. I know you think we're cowards. I know you think we abandoned you in your hour of greatest need. He paused, watching the enemy ships close the final distance. You're wrong. We didn't send one ship because we're cowards. We sent one ship because that's all we need. The first Devourer fired, its dark beam lancing across space toward the human vessel. Mitchell waited until the last possible second, then gave a single order, evasive maneuvers. Begin attack pattern Alpha. The U-East Defiance moved like nothing the Devourers had ever seen before. Instead of the predictable formation flying, they had learned to counter. The human ship began to dance through space in patterns that seemed random, but were actually based on mathematical principles the aliens had never developed. Devourer beam missed by inches. Mitchell's voice continued broadcasting to the galaxy. For 4 hours, you showed them everything you had. Every weapon, every tactic, every secret of galactic warfare. Thank you. Now let us show you why humanity survived when stronger species died. A Defiance fired its first shot. A simple tungsten rod, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed by magnetic rails. No energy to absorb, no exotic particles to counter. Just basic physics traveling at relativistic velocity. The rod punched through the Devourer ship's hull like a needle through paper. For the first time since the battle began, an enemy vessel took damage. Mitchell smiled grimly. Now you're going to learn why the most dangerous predator isn't the strongest or the fastest. It's the one that thinks. The tungsten rod tore through the Devourer ship like a bullet through glass. Dark fluid sprayed from the wound as the ancient vessel's hull tried to repair itself. But there was nothing to adapt to, nothing to learn from. The damage was pure physics, and physics could not be absorbed or countered. Captain Mitchell watched the enemy ship struggle with something it had never experienced before. Actual injury. Fire pattern Beta, he ordered calmly. 6 more railgun rounds launched from The Defiance, each one aimed at a different Devourer vessel. The shots were perfectly calculated based on 4 hours of observation data. Dr. Foster had mapped every weakness, every structural flaw, every point where the dark ships were vulnerable to simple kinetic force. 3 shots found their targets. 3 ancient killing machines suddenly found themselves bleeding. The Devourer fleet immediately changed tactics. Instead of their measured advance, they rushed toward the human ship with desperate fury. Dark beams lanced through space, trying to destroy this new threat that fought in ways they could not understand. But the U.S. Defiance was no longer where they aimed. Captain Mitchell had studied every battle humanity had ever fought. He knew that the key to beating a stronger enemy was never to fight on their terms. The Devourers expected him to stand and trade shots like the alien flights had done. Instead, he made his ship dance. "Evasive pattern Gamma," Mitchell ordered. "Keep them guessing." The Defiance twisted through space in movements that seemed random, but were actually based on chaos mathematics. The ship would suddenly change direction, speed up, slow down, or flip end over end. No computer could predict where it would be. Next, because the movements were controlled by quantum random number generators, the Devourer ships fired again and again, their dark beams cutting through empty space where the human vessel had been moments before. They were used to enemies that flew in formations, that followed predictable patterns. The Defiance followed no pattern at all. Meanwhile, Mitchell kept talking to the galaxy. His voice reached every surviving alien ship, every space station, every world that still had communications. "You see," Mitchell explained as his ship avoided another barrage, "you made the same mistake the Devourers did. You assumed that bigger fleets and stronger weapons win wars. But humans learned something different during our history on Earth." The Defiance fired again. Another tungsten rod punched through a Devourer hull. The enemy ship shuddered and began to list to one side, its dark matter bleeding into space. "We learned that the most dangerous predator is not the strongest or the fastest. It is the one that thinks differently than its prey expects." Dr. Foster looked up from her science station. "Captain, I am detecting panic signals from the Devourer fleet. Their communication patterns are completely chaotic. They do not understand what is happening to them." Mitchell nodded. "They have been winning for 50 years by adapting to enemy tactics. But you cannot adapt to pure physics. You cannot learn to counter mathematics." Commander Park watched the tactical display as more Devourer ships took damage. "Sir, how did you know this would work?" Mitchell kept his eyes on the main screen as his ship avoided another wave of enemy fire. "Because I studied them, Commander. Not just their weapons or their ships. I studied their behavior." He gestured toward the enemy fleet, which was now breaking formation as ships tried desperately to hit the dancing human vessel. "The Devourers are perfect killing machines, but they are still machines. They follow patterns. They adapt to threats in predictable ways. Once I understood their psychology, I knew exactly how to beat them." The battle continued for another hour. The U.S. Defiance led the entire Devourer fleet on a deadly chase through the Kepler 442 system. Every few minutes, the human ship would fire another railgun round, each shot precisely aimed at a critical system or structural weakness. The ancient ships began to fall apart, without energy weapons to feed on, without predictable tactics too. Counter. They were helpless against simple kinetic weapons fired by an unpredictable enemy. Lieutenant Morrison reported from his station. "Sir, we have destroyed 60% of the Devourer fleet. The remaining ships are attempting to retreat." "Negative," Mitchell said firmly. "We do not let them escape to regroup. Dr. Foster, are you ready with the analysis?" Dr. Foster smiled for the first time since the battle began. "Yes, sir. 4 hours of detailed scans have given us complete technical specifications for Devourer ship construction. I know exactly how they work now. Mitchell opened his communication. Channel again. This is Captain Mitchell to all surviving vessels. I am transmitting complete tactical data on Devourer weaknesses. Railguns with tungsten rounds fired at the coordinates I am sending you. Random evasion patterns based on quantum mechanics. Do not let them predict your movement. Across the system, the few remaining alien ships received the data. Captain Mitchell had not just defeated the Devourer fleet, he had learned how to kill them permanently, but there was more to reveal. Admiral Kethfer accused us of cowardice, Mitchell continued. He was wrong. We did not send one ship because we were afraid. We sent one ship because we wanted you to underestimate us. The alien. Survivors listened in growing amazement as Mitchell explained the truth. The question was never why we sent just one ship. The question you should have asked was, why did we tell you we were sending only one ship? Dr. Foster looked up from her instruments. Captain, I am detecting multiple hyperspace signatures. Large ships dropping out of FTL at the system edge. Mitchell smiled, right on schedule. On every screen in the system, new contacts appeared. Dozens of ships, all human design, all armed with railguns and equipped with quantum evasion systems. The secret fleet that had been waiting just outside the system dropped their stealth fields and moved to attack positions. The answer is simple, Mitchell said as his reinforcements surrounded the remaining Devourer ships. We wanted you to show our enemy everything you had. Every weapon, every tactic, every strategic doctrine. We needed them to learn how to fight. Galactic civilization. The final battle was swift and brutal. The human fleet destroyed the remaining Devourers with surgical precision. Tungsten rounds fired from unpredictable angles tore through dark holes that had seemed invincible just hours before. Because, Mitchell continued, we are not part of galactic civilization. We are something different, something they were not prepared for. As the last Devourer ship exploded in silent fire, Mitchell delivered his final revelation. We have been studying all of you for 30 years. Every diplomatic meeting, every joint exercise, every cultural exchange. We know how you think, how you fight, how you make decisions. We know your strengths and your weaknesses. Commander Park stared at her captain with new understanding. Sir, the entire first contact process, was an intelligence-gathering operation, Mitchell confirmed. We needed to understand galactic military doctrine completely before we could design a strategy to defeat enemies that could counter it. The communication channel was silent. Every alien survivor was realizing the same terrifying truth. Humanity had been playing a game that no one else knew existed. The Devourers are gone, Mitchell announced. The galaxy is safe. But things will be different now. You have seen what happens when humans fight seriously. We suggest you remember that lesson. The U's Defiance began its journey home, followed by the secret fleet that had won the real battle. Behind them, the alien survivors drifted in space, trying to understand what had just happened. In her office on Earth, Ambassador Kate Sullivan smiled as she read Captain Mitchell's report. Her aide, Colonel Ben Harper, looked worried. How long? Before they figure out this was all planned from the beginning? Harper asked. Sullivan checked her watch. I estimate 6 months before they realize we have been preparing for this scenario since first contact. That should be enough time to implement the next phase of the plan. Harper nodded nervously. And if they decide we are too dangerous to coexist with? Sullivan's smile grew wider. Then they will learn why we really sent just one ship, Colonel. They will learn that sometimes the most terrifying thing in the universe is not the monster you can see coming. She looked out her window at the stars, where human ships now patrolled routes that had been alien territory just days before. Sometimes it is the monster that has been living next door for 30 years, pretending to be your friend.